right. Here we are for another week of Totally Preventable. And I have this little dilemma going on.
All right.
So I'm now finding myself, I don't even know how many streaming services, but I'm finding myself just watching reruns of old sitcoms.
On Peacock?
I'm watching on Peacock. I'm watching it on Paramount.
Yep.
But I'm just watching reruns of I can pretty much recite some of the things that I'm watching. And I get on and I start flipping through, new shows or movies. And I'm like, there's just so many. And I get afraid of, well, not really afraid. I just don't want to pick a bad movie.
Yeah.
Because then I'm sitting there, and if I start it, I'm not going to watch it like 20 minutes. And they're like, oh, I don't want to see this because now it shows up on my history. Like, maybe I should just finish it. So I'm looking for recommendations. What are you watching right now?
So I'm watching a few things. Okay. Stranger Things.
I've never seen a single episode.
So really good, although this episode seems to be really dark. So or this season. So I watched that with my husband. So if we both can't watch, we don't watch. Okay. So I'm watching How to Get Away with Murder.
Okay.
It's like 6 seasons though, so to binge watch it is getting a little tiresome, but really good. I am watching that new Star Wars series. I can't think of what the name of it is, with my family. I'm very disappointed though, because when it first came out, I got up at 5 a.m. so we could watch it the first day. And when I got home last night, I caught them watching it without me.
That's not nice.
No, they're like, we'll watch it again. I'm like, I was up at 5 a.m. with you guys. What?
I tell you, Star Wars, I've seen Empire Strikes Back and one other. I'm not sure of the name, but I have never watched another one. And I don't know how many years. I think I was 6, maybe 7 years old when I saw it. And the reason why I never watched another one was because I went to, I'm going to guess it was a Macy's. I'm not sure. It was around the holidays. I went with my mom, standing in line, and there were, I can't remember, are they Sandmen? There were these little,
yeah.
So the Sandmen were in the mall. And I was like,
they're kind of freaky.
Whoa. But no one told me behind me was Darth Vader. All I heard was I turned around, I'm 6 years old. I turn around, I see this figure. No one said anything, took right off.
Yeah, and that's been it.
From then, never watched another stuff. But I will take those suggestions about how to get away with murder. I have heard I should watch that.
Yeah. And the Star Wars one is Obi-Wan. I need to redeem myself because I'll be in trouble for not remembering. And last night I felt like I just needed to put on something light and funny. And I think it was called God's Favorite Idiot.
I saw the preview for that. I didn't want, is it good?
Yeah. So I wouldn't recommend it for younger viewers, but it was like really small, short episodes, maybe 20 minutes. And had me chuckling. It was just a good, like, kind of just stupid, silly, but funny sitcom. So yeah,
I did see that advertised.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking this not only because I'm looking for a new show to binge, but our guest today actually had an opening act or was on stage with Don Rickles. So it's kind of funny that we led right into it with funny. But it is the founder, the CEO, the director of the core organization, Gloria Crist.
Gloria Crist is always fun to work with. Kids, it's great to see her work with kids. They love working with her. She's so engaging with them, or they love engaging with her. It's always fun to see.
Seeing and hearing all the different productions that she's put on with the youth is quite amazing. She's worked along with me with the Peer Productions, the creation of Peer Productions, and our first produced movie, which was White Noise, which you can find on YouTube. But yeah, it's going to be great to talk to her.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait.
All right. And here we are. Welcome, preventers. Today, we are honored to have our guest, Executive Director, founder of the core organization, Miss Gloria Crist. How are you doing today, Gloria?
Good morning. I'm doing well, doing really well. Thank you. It's a Friday, right?
That's
It
right.
is. Good morning, Gloria.
Good morning.
So, Gloria, we can just jump right into this. You know, we're so happy to hear. We're so happy to have you here. And with so much that the core organization is doing, can you start off just by letting us know what is the core organization?
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, for one thing. And, you know, you just said there's so much going on, and sometimes I feel like there is, and sometimes I feel like we're not doing enough. Because when you are in the world of direct services, and those direct services are attached to self-awareness through the creative process, and then you pull in substance abuse and you pull in behavioral health, you know, I think, and you're working with K through 12, you think, oh my gosh, we need to do more. So what we are, in the modified version, is we are a 501c3 that provides self-awareness through the creative process. We are an arts education organization with the simple mission statement to consciously transform through the creative arts. CORE stands for Creative Outreach Reinventing Expression. And we cover the gamut of everything that falls under the umbrella of the arts process, from fine arts to robotics to eco arts to performing arts to technical arts to social emotional learning arts. It's just such a wide gamut that we do, and we've been so fortunate to keep it going, and we haven't stopped at all. We didn't stop through the pandemic. We just rotated really quickly to a virtual content, and then started providing take-home arts toolkits. So that's a big nutshell, but that's what we do.
Can you tell us what eco arts are?
So eco arts are things that deal with the earth and the environment, and using earth and using what flora and fauna to create art, like nature mandalas. For instance, Meredith Brower, who's a local superstar here in Tiverton, she creates these beautiful nature mandalas. And a mandala, of course, is attached to a behavioral health and a learning module, which is very Jungian based. But so we brought her in, and the kids actually go out and find nature and create mandalas with the nature, and then photograph it. So then you're using a multidisciplinary form, right? Mm-hmm. What we've done with eco arts is a principal wanted big planters in front of the welcome, you know, the entry foyer. And so we worked with the PTO, and we had kids pick out plants, understand the nature of those plants, and then create the color template of the plants. So it's looking at nature as an art form and bringing that into the whole child, because that's really our focus, is whole brain, heart centered, right?
Yeah, I love that.
That is great. I don't think I could have. I don't know. I don't know if I would be that creative.
I've seen Meredith's work.
Yeah, Meredith's work
amazing.
is beautiful, and she has such a wonderful way with young people. You know, the other piece of eco arts is we do a recycled sculpture contest every year, and we work with the schools, and we work with, you know, kids K through 12 to create art out of recycled objects. And that's been really fascinating to see what kids come up with using found objects.
Wow.
Very interesting. Can you give us a little bit about your background? Like, what made you want to do this? Where'd you come from? What, a little bit, a little bit.
Those are very deep questions. Well, I was born and raised in North Carolina and grew up in southeastern North Carolina, and I immediately went into, I have a Bachelor of Arts in communications and media, and a sociology degree. And then I got my master's in holistic counseling and creative and expressive arts. But I've been in the entertainment industry for 3 decades in film, television, and theater. And while living in New York, I lived really close to an intergenerational residential facility and got involved in looking at ways that the arts can be applied there. And then as a SAG actor, which is a Screen Actors Guild, they have a beautiful literacy program. And actors would go into schools and read. And so I always love the concept of working with young people and taking art as a way to sort of go within and help as just a self, what are you feeling, and all of those necessary questions that don't really get asked a lot anymore. Once I left New York, I ended up in Wilmington, North Carolina, and partnered with a couple of psychologists and a social worker and the Department of DSS. And we created an organization there that is now in its 25th year, maybe, where artists would work with individuals that were referred from DSS, public schools, and housing complexes. And I started a program in a juvenile detention facility and really enjoyed that work, and started looking at ways to make sure that the arts are available to everyone, because it's an inclusive content, right? And I never liked that arts were only available for some. And so from there, I opened my first nonprofit. And once I moved here, just sort of kept it going, and then started really attaching it to education and ways to foster education and extended learning in an arts content. My interest has always been in trauma-informed behavior and what the prefrontal cortex holds on to, especially for young people, because trauma, a lot of people think trauma is attached to profiles, right? And it's a big T, but trauma is also small t, and it can be a dog bite. It can be falling off a bicycle. It can be not having needs met. It can be, and I'm going from small to big T, being a part of a foster care system, divorce, dysfunction, death, loss, grief, all of that impacts the prefrontal cortex, and it impacts the way that young people process. And the arts provide a layer of access in a somatic, right? Body, mind, spirit. And it's always fascinated me that you can see a way that a child holds themselves, a young adult, even grown-ups, and you can look at how trauma shows. And when an arts layer is applied, you can also see the way that begins to form a transformative response, right? Because it's really access, release, transform. So if you can access what's going on even if it's just depression, even if it's just anxiety, if you can access and you can apply an arts to release it, you can transform it. So it sounds really simple, but it really works. And I've seen it so much as even if a kid is hunched over and protecting, right? Their body is protecting. You add a layer of narrative. They're speaking their own language. They're writing their own language. And suddenly they're standing up a little bit taller and they're taking ownership of their behavior, and their self-care tools, become enhanced, and they begin to ask the questions themselves that maybe adults are not asking. And that's really powerful, really, really powerful.
I see your drive seems to lean towards working with the youth, that community.
Yes.
That is awesome. Now, even after being, now you said film, television, theater, and radio? Did you say?
I have done some voiceover work. I don't do it anymore, but yes, I've done a lot of voiceover work and a lot of films and Peabody Award winning television shows. And it's been a huge part of my life. I have been a performer. I opened for Don Rickles in Vegas. And that was a big, big.
That's huge.
So there's a body of work in this body that actually that has seen a lot of life, and I know, and along that path, I never compromised my own integrity and my own moral content. I let the arts work for me. And even through my own, personal tragedies, which we all have, I really relied on the arts and the unconscious art to move myself forward. Because with more and more being layered and layered upon K through 12, and without really looking at the impact of that yet, because I don't think we've begun to see the peak of it yet. The more suppressed and the more unanswered, the more somatic and the more unwellness and the more self-medication and the more dysregulation is happening. I mean, so for me, I just have always preferred to have the arts be an access point earlier so the transformative process can happen sooner, so that we don't have wounded young people walking around. We have, more self-aware individuals who are answering the questions or finding the questions.
Great outlook.
Absolutely. Did you notice any change in youth during the pandemic? Mental health issues, depression, and any of that? And are you able to combat it? How are you dealing with it?
It's the worst I've seen it after decades of working with young people. It used to be like, depression and anxiety used to be targeted to adolescents, right? That 9 to 14. Now it's really K through 22. And it's presenting in ways developmentally appropriate to the age group. The caveat to that is the pandemic introduced social and emotional deficits. So what would naturally happen in a developmental process, kids socially figuring out, emotionally figuring out, is delayed. On top of that delay, you have individuals who were living in households that maybe they were food insecure. Maybe there was, DV, domestic violence. Maybe there was drug overdose. Maybe there was the introduction of alcohol that never happened in a family. I've seen it in ways, so it's presenting in ways that, you know, normally you would see it with younger kids, K4, and that their window of tolerance, you know, they would spiral. You know, their patience was lower. They became frustrated sooner, quicker. Their impulse, of course, which we understand. What I was seeing in middle and high school was almost a shock syndrome, like not being able to make decisions, even if it's just between two different ideas, because and so not being able to make a decision became an anxiety factor. And the normal self-soothing that if you're in behavioral health and if you're in programs that want to share that self, you know, positive self, you know, adaptive behavior, because that's been so scarce, I'm seeing more maladaptive behavior just to find peace. And the flip side of this, I'm seeing more maybe 8 through 12 actually say, I'm freaking out. I can't do this. I need help, which I don't think, maybe there was an exception every now and then where a kid was more vocal, or maybe came from a background where they were supported in asking for help. So the focus the last 2 years, especially the last year, has just been for us as an organization, and all the work we're doing across the board is to implement grounding. Let's just get you back into your body. Let's stay grounded. Let's focus on breathing. Let's connect to the breath. You know, let's talk about things like, so why did you just have this outburst? So tell me, what's that connected to? Because without fail, when the art process is engaged, if it's sketching, anything that's tactile, right? Building, working with clay, that's one element. When you start writing, when you start performing, all of that stuff gets like, you're scratching at the issue. So what has been paramount is we have vowed to keep kids safe. We have stayed true to process and procedure, right? Every kid knows that we have a duty to warn. So if you are telling me these things, that you're a harm to yourself or a harm to others, or you're being harmed, I have a duty to warn. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to keep you creative. I'm going to keep you moving forward. That doesn't mean that we are creating the next Picasso or the next Oscar or Tony winner. It means that we are bringing young people back to who they are, so they can make decisions that serve themselves, so that they can be authentic with their voice. They can identify danger, and they can identify things, this is not right. I don't feel right about this. I need to address this. So that's our layer of making sure that each and every kid that comes into our program is surrounded by, I know it sounds really simple, surrounded by love, unconditional love, surrounded by a strength of process, which is arts-based process, access, release, transform, and that above all, they're in a safe and sacred space. And if they want to cry, they can cry. If they want to scream, they can scream. if they want to be referred to as a different name while they're in our presence, it doesn't bother me, right? So we take pride in that. And it could be a really small step, but that small step in a 2-hour class is transformative in a year, in a lifetime. So that's how all of us, all our teaching artists work. It's how I've worked forever with young people is, I say this and sometimes, and I know that both of you understand this, and I know that both of you have seen this in the course of your work, but really and truly, kids want to be seen and they want to be heard. And that is powerful. And it gets overlooked more than you know.
And it's so easy. It's so easy to just listen to some kids and truly listen to what they want from you or not want from you, or easy step that a lot of people don't take.
Yes, because adults have to take that step without being reactive and without responding to their own projections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. It's hard. It's hard if you're a parent. It's hard if you are facing your own struggles and you haven't dealt with your own work and you see your kid struggling and your kid is trying to vocalize that. It's a difficult thing, but really and truly, if the step is taken to just listen, just see your child, then that's another one of those little small steps, right? And I know it seems so small, but it is part of the preventative. It's totally preventable if we are taking those small steps as an arts nonprofit, as a parent, as a direct services, as a peer counselor, as a counselor, as anyone who's part of the circle of life in the life of one child. That small step really can prevent and retain. You can retain a child and prevent this cycle of self-soothing, self-medication. I just need to feel numb because I don't like the way I feel. And then all of a sudden you're doing the work you're supposed to be doing as a healer, as a change maker.
That's a great point. And a few things that you were saying, as well as the question from Polly, has gotten me to think about the importance of the continuing of access to different programs. Like you see at schools now, they're really trying to push the continue learning over the summer. Don't stop. Like you see the library putting out all types of challenges for the youth to keep them going because of the decline and learning from the pandemic times where distance learning wasn't doing the greatest, or youth weren't retaining as much as they used to, I should say. So does CORE have summer programs as well?
We do. We have an arts literacy camp that has been running. Of course, we had to pause during the pandemic, but we partner with teachers here in the district, and it used to be 2 weeks. This summer, we're coming back, with 1 week, and it's 8:30 to 3. And in the morning, kids have science, reading, math, computer skills. They take a lunch break, a recess, and then in the afternoon, it's fine arts and performing arts. This year, we've added a rotation block of social emotional learning with a social emotional learning educator that's part of our staff. Exactly for that reason. So, and what happens during this week is it's smaller groups, and it's just starting K through just starting 6th, I believe. It's a cohort that forms, and it's kids are immersed in those deficits and they're just staying tuned, right? And it's been really successful. We sold out in 3 days. And the theme this year is express yourself, understanding ourselves and others. So everything that these kids will be engaged in will have the through line of expressing yourself and understanding others and who you are. So their research paper will be on a topic of cultural history. I know that I'm pulling performing arts stuff that's all attached to self-expression and songs or dances that are, or spoken word that has to do with who am I, which is a nice lead-in for a middle program. But I do think, and I really hope that districts will start adding competent mental health care into schools. It's got to happen. It's got to happen.
Do you want to go right into telling us a little bit about Who Am I Anyway?
I would love to. I love this program so much. And it's been such a joy to watch the success of this program. We are in our 8th year. And it's for middle schoolers. Now, it started off as a high school program through a grant, actually through the Tiverton Coalition, a grant to look at suicide ideation and substance abuse with LGBTQ plus students in high school. So our program started there, and it was incredibly successful. And then Rebecca and I started saying, why are we starting in 9th grade? Because what if we started in middle school and there was access to all of this stuff so that when 9th grade rolled around, or even 7th grade, or even 8th grade, there was this body of work, social emotional work, creative work that was doing what we do. So we started Who Am I Anyway at the middle school, and each year there was a theme, and all the work was generated around that theme. We even kept it going during the pandemic, and kids created a film that was based on, we filmed their content, and the theme was, is anybody out there? So everything was attached to this virtual world and what goes on beyond that, because we all get in this block, right? And we think, oh my God, this is it. Does anybody hear what I'm saying? And it was just wicked powerful. But so the kids it's a 16-week module, and it's comprised of fine arts. Always there's an element of creating a portrait, a self-portrait. Some years it was black and white photography versus color photography. Some years it was creating a full body canvas. Some years it was writing a letter to yourself with a missing puzzle piece. And then the kids actually write their own performance piece. It's all confidential. There's never a name attached to it unless the student wants their name. The kids we work with district psychologists or district social workers, and the kids get 2 group sessions. We do a post and a pre-assessment. So we can track these markers of change. And then at the end of the module or the session, which we start in October and we go through February, we have a community performance art gallery reception. So the kids perform their piece. Their art is set up in the lobby like an art gallery. Friends and family and community come watch this piece. Then we have a talk back panel, and then everyone views the artwork, and we have a little reception. So, and in that, right, there's an acknowledgement of the work. There's an acknowledgement of the transformative process. and we celebrate and honor these young people. So the really cool thing is several of the first students that were in that first middle school program just graduated from high school, and they mention "Who Am I Anyway" as one of the forces that kept them going and helped them deal with bullying and peer pressure, and allowed them the opportunity to talk about divorce or talk about suicide, or talk about alcohol abuse, things that, or just talk about being depressed, which I know sort of it's become sort of a trope right now. Oh, I'm depressed, but the rate and adolescent depression is real, and unaddressed depression can lead to a more severe clinical depression where a kid's not getting out of bed all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or not eating.
Right.
So this year, the theme is moving through emotions, and we're using dance, mixed media, multimedia, and spoken word. And the self-portrait, I found this really cool, it's a multi-layered corrugated cardboard that's pliable. And the kids are going to be creating their own life-size puppets. These puppets will move with this. It'd be really cool.
Wow.
Yes.
Whoa.
So, and then, and this, believe it or not, really is the sister to peer productions, because it works in sort of the same format, but it's more. And I think that's why peer productions should stay in a high school, because, in fact, a lot of kids that were in the launch of peer productions were Who Am I Anyway students. So, so again, it goes back to, it's really not about creating this super achiever kid who can, break down brick walls and step out of their comfort zone whenever. It's about creating content that makes that possible. And if that is possible, then everything else that happens in our lives from K to 59 is possible. And we forget that. We forget that the pendulum swings both ways, and we have to just see it through. And without fail, my way will always be the creative arts as a holding marker, right? Until the pendulum swings the other way.
Now, you mentioned peer productions. Can you tell our listeners who aren't familiar with peer productions exactly what peer productions is? And can you also tell us a little bit about how important you feel it is for youth to express their own opinions?
Well, I really sort of feel like you should be talking about peer production. I wouldn't be here had you not made that phone call. So I'm going to throw it back to you, and I want you to put that first breadcrumb down as to how we got to a complete launch, which, I look back at that and it was so effortless. And it was so powerful to anyone who is involved. No one who was engaged in that process could not appreciate the body of work that happened in a really short amount of time.
Right.
So I'm throwing it back to you. Because I think it's important that people know how it came to be.
Right. So it was a deer in headlights moment where I was given the opportunity to try throughout a grant. I was given the task of finding a way to communicate with youth. And rather than me trying to look at different programs that was already out there, all created by adults, I figured, the best thing to do would be to get in touch with some youth, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And then I was told to contact the guru of youth engagement, and was given your information. So that's when that call happened. And then, I think it was 2 calls later, then we had a whole group together. And I mean, that first meeting, that first focus group meeting where, I was coming in as an adult and trying to voice opinion, and I was quickly put in my place by the individuals.
Isn't that remarkable? Like, oh, okay, I'm just going to step back a minute.
Yeah. Because I came in with a whole different idea, and they were like, oh, no. You're going to sit and listen to this. And what came out of those meetings, and what changed my whole train of thought with realizing that, if you want to talk to youth, it's not an adult who's going to be able to speak that language, no matter how hip I think I am. I don't know what these youth are going through. I've never been through a pandemic before. I attended my pep rallies. I went to my proms. I don't know how it is to have that taken away, and to have them sit there and come up with a whole storyline, a creative way to tell the story that they're trying to tell, and just to come together and work was awesome. And that whole project, I know you're putting it on me, but however, I mean, you were the driving force behind that. You brought the youth together, and I was just sitting there on your coattails, to be honest.
It was, well, I appreciate that, but it really was an infrastructure that worked from, the input with Polly and Tiverton Coalition, and the input of strategic prevention, and the input of Newport. It just was a collaborative effort. And I really love working in a collaborative way. And, I learn every time. I am never, ever under the impression that I know everything, because boy, oh boy, will that slap some reality into your being. If you think you walk into a group of adolescents and young people and you think you know everything, so it's humbling to me. And I say this, I really just provide a structure. I provide because in the midst of a pandemic, when fear is the through line, when anxiety and depression are the through line, and the unknown is driving the bus, then it's up to a creative adult who has done the work, who is vulnerable enough and weak enough to say, okay, this is what I can do, and this is how we're going to do it. And I'm going to provide you some structure. Here's all the tools you need. Let's start. Let's begin. Because, and one thing I will say that really, really made me know the value of this particular program is one of our cast members, and a couple of the kids also said this too. Not once did you ever say, this is my project. You always, everyone involved always said, we are going to create this. Right. And that is immensely empowering to young people. And I think that was a big component of the success of this. We also had a learning curve with equipment and sound and things that, and things that should have been a learning curve, right? And we navigated all of those. And it was also simple things like when you've got young people that have written a script, a screenplay, young people who are directing, that presents conflict, right? If someone's not doing what their vision is, then they have to think of a way to address it. And I think that's the beauty of what happened, and that we had so many parents show up, so many community members show up.
Yes.
And we're sobbing, we're joyous, we're asking questions. You can't measure that. There's no price tag for that. It is authentic success. Really, it really and truly. And so I'm really happy that we have funding for film 2, because I think it's going to be, now we have a launch and we have a building point.
Right.
And we have this beautiful foundation of information underneath that. And we have the same team in place. So that's part of the structure, right?
Yeah.
Even for like the small amount that my husband and I helped out, we became just, even some people in the office, everyone is excited to see these kids when they're in the paper, when we saw prom pictures. Did you see that? Everyone is excited to follow these kids and what they're up to and their success. And just that small interaction gave us that connection to those kids.
One of the best moments, and we didn't plan this, it happened organically. Mm-hmm. The kids that showed up for the red carpet, dressed in their red carpet to support their peers. Exactly. I was like,
on a Saturday.
So great.
Right.
They didn't plan that. They did themselves. So that is taking ownership of a creative content, right? That's taking ownership. Look what I made. Look what I did.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
When you have someone involved in a project that is a little bit more shy, a little more reserved, believe it or not, I used to be super shy when I was a kid. I used to hide behind my mom's leg, and she used to get very mad at me. Stop, get out. And so, but do you have some kind of techniques? Do you have some kind of supports or measures that you put into place to try to build up their confidence a little bit and let their voice be heard?
Yes. And that's a great question. So I turn it on to them, especially if it's in and we just had this happen in Willy Wonka. It's a performance piece. And kids know that, 98% of it is on stage, and I'll have kids say, well, I don't want to be on stage. So we look at what they want to do. Well, I really love graphics. Even like 5th and 6th graders, I really love sound. So I turn it back on them if it's like, there's no way I'm getting up there. There's no way I'm talking about who I am. So we start as a group, no matter if it's a performing arts piece or Who Am I Anyway, peer productions, anything. There's always a buffer of, well, let's just come together as a group of people. So we maybe have 2 or 3 weeks of just hearing what each other sounds like and hearing each other's comfort zone and hearing what someone wants to do. And so there's 2 examples. The second year we did Who Am I Anyway, we had a kid who was actually referred to the program by guidance. And the kid came in the first day, hunched over, head down, dressed sort of all in just a cloud. There was this cloud. And didn't want to participate, didn't care, I hate it, it's stupid. So I just said, well, let's just join the circle, and let's just hear your name, and let's just hear you say, if you were an ice cream, what flavor would you be? So That's a vocal piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can sit down and you can sort of watch what we do. This went on for 3 weeks. But the second week, I said to this kid, so what is it that you like to do? Oh, I love anime. Oh, well, I've got this sketch pad and I've got some, I've got some pastels. Why don't you, listen, if you want to sit and sketch, that's cool. And then maybe you can explain to us what it is. For 4 weeks, that kid sat in the front row, in the chair while everybody else was doing stuff on stage and sketched. By the 5th week, they were in the circle. Second year, this student was back. This student wrote a piece about the family. This student sang a song. I was like, okay. So and the same thing happened with Willy Wonka. The kid was like, no way, I'm not doing it. This is not for me. And I was like, well, what do you like? Well, I really love graphics. So we use a program called Canva. We use it in Who Am I Anyway? Because part of Who Am I Anyway, the kids create their own magazine. And so I said, well, we need a playbill. So why don't you, while you're sitting here, you do have to come in, say your name. You do have to be part of, we have an opening, where everybody just comes together and we talk about the day. And then we have a closing. And I always call it our gratitude circle, where we give thanks in whatever context works for a student. Put it in the circle and they leave. So you do have to participate in those 2 things because it's part of a cohort. It's part of our community. By the end of the show, this kid had not only created the playbill, but was also designing the lights.
Wow.
So, and then another student was working with our adult who does sound design, but by the end of the show was running sound cues. Mm-hmm. So that to me is success.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Now you mentioned Willy Wonka and seeing the pictures, listening to the audience, hearing, seeing the comments like on postings. It looks so effortless. It looks like, oh, this was right on time, just put together, easy flowing. Can you please tell us what goes into the production of a full-scale feature such as Willy Wonka?
Well, it was the first time back on stage for this youth company, right? Because the core organization has its own theater under our umbrella. I knew it was going to be tough coming back. So we actually added a social emotional arts integration piece into this, where we had a social emotional learning staff come in, and for just a couple of weeks, we just talked about, it was crazy. I did not understand how anxiety would present. And by the 4th week, I was like, oh, okay. So we just turned it in. The kids designed their own 3D candy bars. So that became the tactile piece, right? The kids created their own community guidelines for the theater for the next 12 weeks. That became a grounding force. Typically there's a team, we have a costumer and we have someone creating props. Because of the pandemic, both of those 2 people backed out. So not only was I taking on the task of directing, but I was also trying to find costumes and creating all of this and manage 28 middle schoolers who were having moments of meltdown, which is to be understandable, So it was a hard show because 98% of the kids in this particular production have never been on stage before. So I had to provide a foundation of just the basics. And, I came in with this big idea of how Willy Wonka was going to work. And at one point, I had to let my ego go and like, oh no, we are simplifying. We are making this really, really simple. And that was the recipe that worked for the greater good. And so everybody was safe. Everybody felt supported. Everybody knew their music. Everybody knew where to go on stage, even though sometimes that got a little, but they were going the wrong way. They knew how to fix it. So that's the success. Again, you can't measure that, but it was watching kids who have never stepped on stage before and have said, there's no way, I can't do this. Sing a solo or 10, do a costume change, figure out how they're being triggered, right? Because once you start singing and moving and being vulnerable, everything that's not resolved starts to be like, oh, hello, I'm still here. You haven't dealt with me. So there were a lot of really long nights. But in the end, it was exactly as it was supposed to be. And it was joyous. It really was.
Yeah, it shows. It shows. You can tell just from the photos, it shows.
Oh, good. Good.
So if I'm a caregiver and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, this is perfect for my kid. Like, how do people get in touch with you or get their kids involved in a program that you're...
So, our website, thinkfeelcreate.org, has tons of information. We have our own software for registration, so everything is in-house. We are self-sufficient. Our teaching artists are all have background checks. They're all masters in what they do, particularly they're masters in being passionate about sharing their love of their art form or art discipline. All the information and everything we do in all the schools that we provide services for it's on our website. We are also on Facebook. The core org is private for those families that want some confidentiality. The core organization is public. Core Youth Theater is also there. We are not shy to corporate sponsors. For anyone out there, we have a huge database. We serve all of Newport County. So I just have to put that out there as the founder and director and the president, and the grant writer and and that's how we go. We go from there. We run programs from October through June. So, yep.
Wow.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Gloria.
Thank you, guys.
Greatly appreciate this interview. Thank you so much.
Yep, it's been wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, you have a great weekend, both of you.
Thank
You as
you.
well.
You
Take care.
too, Gloria.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yep.